So today I wanted to just get started. We have Anise Vance, who is the Open Data Program Manager for the City County of Durham, who is going to share his vision of open data and how he is transforming its use in Durham County, and it's a great model from what I've read and what I've talked with him about. It's a great way, and it's going to really be what I call Open Data 2.0, where we actually take data and make it more useful to communities and make those different things, and actually try to make outcomes related back to the sharing of that data, that sharing of that transparency. So I don't want to talk too much about it, but thank you.
You should give a presentation.
Yeah, but thank you, Anise.
Thank you. The first thing I want to do is thank everyone for being here today. I clearly am heavily invested in open data because I'm an open data program manager and I've been involved in it for a while. But for folks who are not working directly in it, to come to something like this on a Saturday morning when you don't have to is really quite a thing. So I do want to say thank you to everyone in the room for being here today. It does mean a lot to me, and I think it means a lot to a lot of people who are professionally involved in open data work. Before I begin, I should actually beg your forgiveness for something. So today is the first day of the Baha'i fast. Does anyone in here fast? Is anyone in here Muslim or or just fast? Yeah, and now people are doing intermittent fasting, right, and all this kind of stuff. So Baha'is, if you're a member of the Baha'i faith, you fast for 19 days in March. So that means you don't eat anything from sunset to sunrise for those 19 days. And today's the first day of the Baha'i fast. So we're like 3 hours in, which shouldn't be too hard or too difficult, but for people like me who kind of run almost entirely on coffee, it becomes a little bit challenging. So if I do say anything loopy, anything weird, please feel free to just like raise your hand and be like, Anise, do you need coffee? And I'll be like, yes, but I can't have it. And we'll go from there. So as Chris mentioned, I'm the Open Data Program Manager at the City and County of Durham. My wife and I moved to this area about 4 years ago. We actually live in Carrboro. Before being here, we were in Boston. I was the Senior Manager of Research in Race and Equity at the Boston Foundation. And we are grateful to be in this area. It has such a wonderful tech sphere. That's a little bit about me. I'm happy to answer questions about me personally, but I think what I'd rather start off by doing is just getting a little bit of a sense of the room, just so we know who we are. The first question I wanted to ask is, in terms of what people do on a day-to-day, are people, who's here is in the private sector? Private sector, 1, 2, oh wow. 3, okay. Okay, not as many as I would have guessed. Who here is kind of in the nonprofit world? 2, 3, 4, 5, awesome. And then in local government. Local government, okay, fantastic, fantastic. Can I ask which government?
Wake County.
Wake County.
Morrisville.
City of Raleigh. Raleigh, oh, fantastic. Love Raleigh.
Wake County.
Wake County, love Wake County too. I love all of these places. Wake County, awesome, awesome. I wanted to ask, how many people in the room use data or code regularly? By regularly, I mean at least once a week. Perfect, perfect. A lot of the room. This presentation, by the way, is not like technical in any way, so if you're hoping for that, I apologize. And if you were not hoping for that, you're welcome. The next question I wanted to ask is, how many people here do some kind of volunteer work regularly? A lot of volunteers too. Okay, fantastic. And then finally, how many people, the people who are working in open data programs probably shouldn't be a part of this sample, but how many people here have visited an open data site in like the last 3 months? Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so now I know who I'm talking to a little bit, and hopefully you guys looked around and you kind of know who you're talking to a little bit as well. We're going to do some breakout exercises. We've been going through budget season, as I'm sure other local governments have been going through the last month. So I've been giving a lot of presentations. I'm a little bit tired of my own voice. So we're going to start off with a couple of exercises that are really about you all thinking and talking to each other more than anything else. The first thing that we're going to first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to think for just about 30 seconds, shouldn't take that long, about what the purpose or motivation behind open data might be. Okay, so we'll take 30 seconds. We'll look at the clock right there. got something? Second question, we're going to do the same thing, just about 30 seconds. What are some of the practical limitations to open data? Questions are intentionally broad, by the way. So go in multiple directions here. Good? Everyone feel like they got something? Yeah? All right, so what I'm going to ask folks to do, I know we're a little bit spread out, but if you could look towards a neighbor or maybe two neighbors, I know in the back it might be 3 folks. Oh wait, we just got another one, excellent. But in groups of 2 or 3, actually get together and maybe talk about your responses to each of these things, and then we'll go from there. I'm going to ask a couple of groups to share back with us, just so you know. All right, folks.
So, you know, things
How are we
like that.
feeling? We feel like we had a conversation, enough time for a conversation now? Maybe we have 2 groups volunteer to share back a little bit?
No one wants to go.
No one wants to volunteer? There we go.
We took a couple notes. We all had similar ideas, but different takes. Of course, transparency. The term "good faith" came up.
Yep.
Citizen involvement and provides kind of a dialogue, so we know as citizens can kind of be more aware of why government's making decisions they're making.
Yep.
And then kind of levels the playing field. That was a term put out.
Yeah.
And then as far as the how data can be used or can be difficult to use, or what was the second question?
Limitations.
Limitations, yeah. So we thought sometimes data can be confusing and hard to use, and it's not necessarily stored. It's just data, and that can be difficult to crunch.
Yeah.
And you may not know all the context of the data or the attributes of the data and what it all means.
One other group want to share back? Fantastic.
Jointly shared. We talked again also about the transparency and visibility and providing insight into all of the government works. It's going to be a black box. You're too into it in the bubble. So I really like your response about citizen involvement. I think that's really important. We talked about just being able to make better decisions, maybe operating off old ideas or normal stereotypes, and the data can kind of help you back away from that and start serving better. And then we also talked about limitations like different formats. If the data's not in the same format, you can really merging these different data sets together. The dangers of when you publish your data in a static format, does that become kind of the truth and then you can't get away from it? So data quickly becomes stale. And then some of the another advantage was you mentioned getting in front of like lawyer requests, like just being prepared to be responsive. This is your workflow, and I think that also needs to be things.
Yep. Anyone want to add anything else burning to that? Those are good. Those are really good. Actually, they highlighted a few of the tensions that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to double down on those tensions, and I'm going to have you guys vote on one side or another. This is a binary question. You can't say, Anise, no, there's gray area. No, for the sake of this conversation, we're going to talk about things in binaries, okay? I'm kidding, but for this purpose, this exercise, right? So you have to choose what's more important. You are the new city manager of the city of your choosing, and you get to choose what is more important to that city. Transparency on one end, or privacy and security on the other. Take 10 seconds to think about it. We're going to vote by clapping. So you're going to do a double clap. You're going to go, okay? So So folks who are on the side of transparency, double clap with me now. Folks who are on the side of privacy and security, double clap with me now. All right, well, there's some difference in the room. This is good. This is good. Okay, the next one. What's more important is everybody having the right information all at once, or making sure and taking our time that the context is set. Okay? Take 10 seconds. All right. Folks who want all information all at once, double clap with me now. Excellent. Folks who want context, take time. Yeah. That one's kind of what I expected. The first one was not. The first one was a nice split. The last one is, as the city manager, you have found $500,000, a lump sum of $500,000 that you have to invest in one thing. You can't split the money. It's a generous philanthropist who's come in and said, $500,000, I want it to go to one thing only. Okay, you have two choices on what that one thing might be. That one thing is either going to be to invest heavily in technology, or to hire people to engage with the community around the technology and data that you already have. Folks who want to invest in the technology, clap with me now. Folks who want to invest in the community engagement, clap with me.
I want both.
So that's interesting. Those last two especially represent kind of a shift in thinking in the open data world, I would say, over the last 5 years. Right? If you asked folks 10 years ago, the numbers would have been completely reversed. Again, off of this very tiny sample size that is not represented. So, the title of my presentation today was The Promise and Perils of Open Data. We've already named a lot of them, but I just wanted to quickly go through them again so that we can kind of have them at the forefront of our mind. And there are some that were mentioned that actually I don't have on here, but that absolutely should be on here, right? This is not a conclusive list. The first thing, and this is what everyone talks about, is transparency. We want government to be transparent. We want to be able to know and understand what's happening. We want to make sure that we as citizens are engaged, right? Very simple. Second is accountability. Transparency and accountability are two different things, right? Anyone kind of tease out that difference for me?
Transparency is trust,
Yeah.
and accountability is your report card on how well you are performing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Involves more of an action. It's oftentimes a little bit more sensitive, right? Because you're actually telling someone, yep.
Just from my public service hat, I think the biggest shift in politics today is that a lot of the decisions and facts are being misrepresented on social media sites. And without accurate data, it becomes very difficult for elected officials to make transparent decisions. And so, and accountability is also to hold politicians more accountable, so they don't just hide behind their social media tweets and blogs, but they're accountable to the real facts and data. And that's where I think it's very critical for democracy and government. It's actually very scary, to be honest with you, because I can tell you that there's people rely on their social media and next door neighbor accounts for news. And this isn't only happening in Morrisville. In cities, people are using that as real facts, which are completely against the real data that's out there with existing stuff that's in briefing items or that the staff. So I think they go hand in hand.
Yep.
But I think it's critically important to hold your elected officials accountable. I think it's critically important to hold your citizens who go out there and blast out stuff saying, you know, this is terrible, this is awful. And then, yeah, it's politics. I mean, the more things you throw out there that stick, you're going to win an election. But is that really good for the people? And that's where you all come in as a community to make sure that we're providing this data in an open and transparent format. And I'm just coming from the heart there, because I see this happening in cities all over the county and the state, and of course it's happening at the national and state levels as well.
No, that's great. That's great. And it also leads into our next one here, right? Democratization. So the thought there is just that information has often been accessed by the privileged. Right? We want to make sure information can be accessed by everyone. third one is innovation, or fourth one is innovation. And this has become kind of the sexier theme of this, right? You put out a bunch of great data, people build a bunch of great apps, the world is somehow transformed. Right? That's been the dominant narrative. Now innovation is just sort of a buzzword that people use all the time, right? Every place you go, they talk about innovation, which just means coming up with something different. And then the last one is engagement, right? A big part of the promise of open data was that, hey, we can create communities out of this, and which has happened to an extent, right? This is people in this room, right? Is evidence of that happening to an extent. So this was this like beautiful, incredible vision that really was given a lot of momentum under the previous presidential administration that was very much in support of open data and that signed several pieces of, they weren't technically legislation, but several executive documents on open data and really pushed that forward, right? There's a great TED Talk on this, by the way, that you can look up. I forget the name of, how am I forget? Do you know her name, Chris?
Haley Bender.
Please, why don't you say that?
Is it Haley?
Yes, it is. Yes. Thank you.
What's the last name?
Haley Bender.
So that was the vision. And then gradually, well not gradually actually, very rapidly, people started to notice some things were maybe a little bit amiss with that vision. In terms of transparency, privacy became the huge concern, right? I remember when I first came to the city and county of Durham, in my first meeting with what we call a community of practice, it's a community of people who are very interested in data, right? The big topic of conversation was HIPAA. Right? Everyone know what HIPAA is? Yeah? Does someone want to describe HIPAA? Maybe someone who knows a little bit more about it than I do?
Critical information for portability and accountability.
Absolutely.
It protects personal identifying information of individuals, and it doesn't just apply to the medical world. It applies to personal identifying information across systems.
Absolutely, right? So there's this huge concern. You don't want your health records all out there. If you're talking about the criminal justice system, a lot of that data actually is very sensitive and is personally identifiable, and that's covered as well. Right? So there's multiple realms in which privacy becomes a huge challenge. The second one for accountability is lack of context. I have a colleague who tells this story all the time, and it's a really great story. He's an older gentleman. He's worked at the city of Durham for decades, and he remembers they used to publish their entire, and they still do actually, their entire budget, right? A bunch of different numbers. And at one city council meeting, someone showed up to this budget meeting with the city council and had a can of, I think it was paint. And the person said, in your budget, you are paying $2 for this can of paint. I bought this at Walmart for like 50 cents. I forget what the exact number is. Why are you doing this? This is a waste of taxpayer money, right? And it was embarrassing to the people on the city council. It was embarrassing to my colleague. They went back and they looked at the numbers and they discovered actually what they were buying was concentrated stuff from which you could make like 20 different cans of paint. So it ended up being cheaper and the better decision, but there was no context, and so it became this huge kerfuffle over a can of paint, right? Lack of context. And so people, especially in local governments, are very, very concerned about this. Third thing, democratization is lack of capacity, right? We in this room kind of consider ourselves a community that thinks about and uses data all the time, and it's ubiquitous. But I'm sure we could also come to the conclusion that there are many people in our communities who don't necessarily have the skill level or the know-how to go about using data, to go about using open data, right? And that's a huge challenge, right? And it's not that those people can't, it's just that the way that they're being approached, the way that they're being taught, their inclusivity, and there's a lot of kind of social and economic issues at play here, but it's a very, very real issue. And what sometimes happens is we recreate the same sort of privileged community that we were trying to get away from when we talked about democratization. The fourth thing is innovation. And a big challenge here, honestly, is lack of capacity in government, I would say. Right? How many people have gone to an open data portal or any kind of a government site and been like, oh man, this data set looks great. I can get all of the permits, or I can get all of this data on lending or all of this data on whatever it is, and then you go into the data set and you're like, wait, this isn't clean. Where is the metadata? How am I supposed to be pulling this out regularly? Is it going to be updated? Right? All of these challenges come up. And that's something on the government side that needs to be addressed. Right? There's plenty of innovation in the private sector. There's plenty of innovation from volunteers, but there is a challenge in them. The last thing here is engagement, right? And here's a critical question, and Steve and I actually were just talking about this, but I've literally had government officials in past life ask me, well, what is actually the impact of this? How do we measure this? You say you want to engage, you build these shiny things, so what? Right? Because when they're concerned about rising inequality, when they're concerned about people not getting their trash picked up on time, when they're concerned about issues on a day-to-day that affect residents, it's really hard to connect to, oh, okay, we're going to put up this shiny new tool, right? So impact has become like a very strong question in open data. Everyone on board? Yeah? Anyone want to push back on anything? Please feel free to do. We're a tight group here, yeah.
I see impact. I'm kind of in a weird space. I'm more of a policy analyst, but we do a lot of internal stuff, and then we take it out to different groups, and here's the research piece that you don't have time to do,
Yeah.
it for you.
Yeah.
You take it, to me, the impact is that, oh crap, I can take this to my mayor, to my council, to my board, to my manager. Like, the impact is, I don't have capacity, but this other person did, they did it for me. So the impact is actually kind of addressing it, in different areas. So just to not be very specific at all about what I'm talking about, but it's for someone who doesn't have capacity or doesn't have the investment in innovation, but they definitely have all the accountability.
Sure.
It's sharing those tools and sharing it even among other government entities and other public entities.
Yep. That makes sense. There's a dispersion factor there, right? Okay, so I technically have about 10 more minutes here. So I was going to do another group exercise, but we're going to skip over that. Is that okay? Are people still with me? Are people still feeling awake? We don't need another group exercise? We need more clapping? Is that All right, so the conclusion of this is that we have to be about more than just posting data, right? That's the general bottom line. If all we're doing is posting data, we're not actually affecting any change, or we're not addressing any of the issues that I just raised up there. Okay. So the City and County of Durham, by the way, I say City and County of Durham because it is two separate organizations for folks who don't know, and the Open Data Program is a joint initiative, so we're both for the City and the County of Durham, and we report to both. So here's some modest changes that we made, right, in thinking about how we were going to go about addressing some of these challenges. The first, addressing lack of context, was thinking about storytelling and metadata. So I'm going to flip over to our new Open Data portal. Also gives me a chance to kind of get more people's eyes on it. This, by the way, we're hoping to put through some user testing next year. We just had to get something up, so it won't stay the same visually, but this is what it looks like right now. opendata.durhamnc.gov. Okay, so what we did, right at the front of this, is we have kind of three guides here, right? If you go to the Beginner's Guide to Data, you can see that this is really a story note, right? Integrates with video, that comes up. It integrates with video, it integrates with audio. You can tell a story in such a way that people will hopefully be engaged. This is just sort of a beginner's guide. So this is just telling the story of what is data and why would you use it, right? But you can imagine a story on any number of things. You could imagine a story on perceptions of Durham. You could imagine a story on infrastructure development. You could imagine a story on involvement in the criminal justice system and how that's changing over time, right? Being built on some tool like this, in which you're integrating the data alongside the context. A second key thing that we're doing and that we're going to be pushing for in this next year is to have much more rigorous standards of metadata. We've changed our policies around that, and that is a long haul process, so please don't expect us to have the best metadata in the world tomorrow, but but it is something that we're very strongly pushing for in our work plan for this next year, so that people can get the appropriate context and the appropriate automation really with documents. The second one that we wanted to think about here, and this was addressing unused capacity across communities, right? And this again is about, for us at this particular moment, is really about design and how people enter our world. So right at the top, and I just showed you the tool itself, but we have a beginner's guide to data. That's the pathway that you see immediately. We know that people in this room, when you go to this website, you're gonna find the data you need. You don't need me to hold your hand, right? You guys are gonna go to the search bar. If it's not in the search bar, you're gonna go through the catalog. If it's not in the catalog, you're gonna email me. I've gotten those emails. I know you're gonna get the data that you need. What I don't know is that people who are unfamiliar with data will come to the website and actually stay on the website. By and large, they won't, which is a challenge for us. I also don't know if those people even know about the website, right? So when they do come, they better have an immediate pathway, because there are not that many of them. A big component of this is also partnership with our other city departments, right? We're developing a close partnership with our budget department, with our neighborhood improvement services, with a variety of departments, so that we can actually engage people, get in front of different communities, and talk about the value of this, right? So that's the second thing. The fourth thing is the Data Academy. And this is about addressing capacity within the city and county of Durham itself, right? We have a lot of people who use data. We also have a lot of people who don't use data. And we have a lot of people who need to have a certain level of data literacy. If you're gonna look at a chart, you should be able to ask some smart questions about it. So what we've done is we've developed 20 to 25 courses across 3 tracks: beginner, intermediate, advanced. And folks from throughout the city and county can apply, again, using our website, can apply to be a part of the Data Academy and apply for specific courses, right, depending on their level of proficiency. And in this way, we can start to raise the capacity of folks. Our vision, yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, it's great to have the courses and you need to have the interaction. Have you all thought about some sort of self-guided modules so people don't have to register? They can do some things at their own speed?
Yeah, so we have thought about that. People will still have to apply and register with us, just so we can keep track of our numbers and show, again, to the impact point, show that we're actually doing something. But a large chunk of our advanced track, and actually most of a good chunk of our intermediate track as well, is online modules, right? And that especially makes sense if you're someone who's past the beginner's phase, and you need some advanced technique in Python, and you're the only person who needs it. Why would we set you up individually with somebody? It's much easier for you to go online and do that self-learning. So we do have that kind of breadth, and some of our classes are actually blended, where part of it is online and we have a facilitator. So our idea was to build capacity in the city across different levels, right, and across different departments, for folks to start using data as culture, as a collective, for us to start using data to make decisions, right? And so that's a long process. We're only putting about 30 people through parts of the Data Academy this year. Our hope is to get to 80 to 100 next year, and then continue that pace for the future, for the foreseeable future. But the concept is that the more people that can be engaged, again, the better it is for the city, and ultimately the better it is for the residents. And then the final thing is special projects. And Steve, this actually speaks to what you and I were chatting a little bit about before, in terms of impact, right? And Steve's a council member in Morrisville. And he was telling me right now, he's very concerned with the experiences of residents, right? And how they're doing in Morrisville and how we can improve those experiences. So part of the Open Data program's focus, about 1/3 of our time, is actually spent on just partnering with other departments on projects that are high leverage for them and that have impacts for residents. So I'll give an example. We're partnering with a few departments on building a database for businesses owned by people of color, right? And using that database, we could actually start targeting programming and services a little bit better to those folks. And so that's a direct tie-in to when we think about shared economic prosperity. We're also working with our innovation team. I don't know if people have seen what Durham's doing around the justice-involved population, but we're working with Chris with our innovation team to start to think about, well, how do we build systems of data such that we can understand who's coming in and out of Durham's justice system in a much more nimble, faster way, and so that we can apply various analyses to that data and target interventions at particular points, right? These are very high leverage kind of projects that we're getting involved in to show, hey, look, you can bring data into any of these spaces, right? And that helps us with our open data work, by the way, because then people start to trust us and people know that we're, in it for them as well. So those are the 4 kind of modest changes that we've made. And again, these are modest changes. I don't want to oversell anything. These are all things that are sort of at the beginning and that we're learning about and we're thinking about. Our general thought, and this is a big statement, but our general thought is that for open data to be most effective, it has to be, as we saw in those problems, it has to be engaged in more than just open data. It has to be engaged in organizational and social change. It can't be siloed on its own, and it can't expect the entire population of whatever community you're in to come to it. It has to go with it. So that's the process that we're engaged in, and that's really what we're thinking about at the city and county of Durham. Did I finish on time? I did. Fantastic. I was really worried, actually, that I was going to go over. The last thing, I should have put this on here. I just want to make sure that, am I allowed to write on this?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's an N, in case anyone's wondering. Anise Vance. This is just my email address in case anyone wants to get in touch. I should have brought cards, but I just forgot. And I mean, in the tradition of open data, please feel free to email me at any time. I try to get back to people within 24 hours. If I don't get back to you within 24 hours, hit me up again. And if the email gets caught in the junk mail, right, because local governments have different security measures, if the email gets caught in the junk mail, you can also just look me up on LinkedIn and ping me there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I think the last 15 minutes of this was devoted to questions and answers?
Yes.
Awesome. So thank you all for your time.
I do want to say, you say the modest change, but I think it's actually, it's an enormous and amazing change to what you're doing. Because I know, having been involved in the open data community since its inception back 10 years ago, what you're doing is just, it's the way things are going to change. I think the old style was just throw everything up there and hope something happens with it. But doing it intentionally like this, I think just amazing. Thank you for spearheading that.
Oh, I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for collecting everyone together. It's really great.
So, any questions?
What's a success story you'd like to see other areas adopt?
So I'm going to use a different example. Are any of you familiar with, I assume you just meant a success story generally, not?
Yeah.
Is anyone familiar with San Francisco's open data program? Yes, fantastic. They're great. They're really awesome. They also have like a staff of like 5 people, so it's a different world. And they also the city in general has a staff of like 30,000. So it's a very, very different world that they're operating in. But I'd encourage you to go to their website. I won't pull it up here just for the sake of time. But they have a data academy as well that is incredibly robust. Right? They build all the courses themselves. They put hundreds of people through this academy every year. Very kind of high-level stuff. And then critically, they make all their materials open to the public. Right? And they're able to do that because they're developing all these materials themselves. They have the capacity and time to do that. So it's truly open data in the sense that they're thinking, okay, we're going to offer this to our local government so that folks can get the services they need and we can drive forward a data-driven culture. And we're going to make all these materials open to the public so that folks who want to learn about X, Y, or Z at least have access to the materials for free, right? Maybe not this facilitation, but they'll have access to the materials for free. That, to me, is just awesome. If Durham could eventually get there, that would involve, again, developing our own materials so that we could send them out for free. That would be a dream, and I hope other cities and counties think about doing that.
I know when I developed some of the data courses for us, I relied heavily on their materials and adapted them.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's good. I think that would be a good practice for us to maybe even regionalize that.
Yeah.
So, you know, the same things that we need to look at are the same. We have the same challenges. We have the same things where a bunch of us are actually talking about starting up a sort of a region or a regular lunch and learn for us in open data space. I think that'd be a really good thing to do that, and we could actually increase our capacity that way as well. So.
That is a great idea. I'm just noting that right now, actually.
Yeah. Any other questions? John?
I think one thing to consider is almost being a little proactive. And at least for 2020, for the county commissioner races, once candidates are filed, again, I know this gets very sensitive because it gets political, but you can say, here's one way to know more about the community and shape your understanding of the issues, not to then focus it beyond that, but to say crime or poverty or other kinds of things. And then on the other side, there's many local efforts within cities and counties called citizen academies, which are part of sort of general education for folks. And so some kind of exposure to folks who are already interested in learning about their city or county government, and then learning this part of it as well.
I know we tried to do some with that with the Citizen Data Academy, but we never really ever get the track. I think that's another thing eventually when
And joining forces with others who maybe are doing the administrative backbone of it.
yeah.
Is,
I mean, we have a similar curriculum. You know, you don't have to be responsible for all the classes. I don't have to be responsible for all the classes. You can, you know, it's not that bad to send someone from Raleigh to Durham, Durham, Raleigh.
yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, no, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Or we can collaborate.
Or yeah.
Yeah. There's another hand. Jason.
So one of our big challenges has been building community conflicts, and it's very difficult to tackle that in Guilford County. It's very conservative county. So I'm curious how Durham, are there any approaches and successes that you've had with community ethnography?
Sorry, what?
Community ethnography and integrating that into your open data program.
So I think the context in Durham is probably very different than Guilford County. Literally one of the strategic initiatives in our city plan that open data is responsible for is supporting departments to disaggregate their data by race and ethnicity. Right? So that immediately tells you kind of our context. There is generally a very, very high level of support and desire to bring in perspectives that are maybe outside of your typical privilege perspective, right? And so that means it's really easy for us to build that kind of demographic context and bring that to whatever it is we're doing. We're actually demanded to do that. There have been moments where city council members have said, oh, this data is not disaggregated by gender, it's not disaggregated by ethnicity, or it's not disaggregated by income, it's meaningless to me, right? So that's kind of our context. In terms of actual ethnographic work, like qualitative ethnography, oh, that's really interesting. We have not touched that. We should, but we are just still struggling to get our quantitative data up to snuff. But I think it's a direction that is fascinating.
So you say you work across the city of Durham and county of Durham. You feel different departments, different needs and structures and all that stuff. One is bad enough, two coming together. It's probably really hard. So when you're dealing with a department that might be reluctant to put data out there for whatever reason, whether it's because they're worried about the quality of it or whatever, how do you kind of get them over that hump? I know it's probably a little bit different for everybody. What are some of the things you do to kind of get them seeing the benefit of it, but also being okay with it being out there to whatever extent they can?
Yeah. Well, I'd say three things. I would say, the first is that there are enough departments, like 52, 53 combined departments in the city and county, that if one department says no, I have other departments to go to. But what has also happened in the past is that, we've invested a lot of time in relationship building, right? It's going out to lunch with people, it's dropping by their office every other day to say hi, no other agenda in mind, right? But a lot of that relationship building, because people's anxiety about putting out data is a trust thing, right? It's like, who is this random person coming to me asking for my data, which is so central to my work, and I might misuse it, and that threatens my job, right? So building that trust, building those relationships has been something that, we're very, very actively thinking about and conscious of, and then not violating that trust is huge, obviously. And then the third thing is, in terms of what we can do with data to make sure that it's not sensitive, right? There's a lot of stuff that you can do. We put out, actually it's on pause for the moment, but next week we're going to resume putting out police incident data, right? Which is actually highly sensitive data. It has a lot of highly sensitive information, but it's really easy to obfuscate that data if you have the right partner and that person trusts you to do it, right? You can obfuscate the location a little bit, you can take out particularly identifying information, so you can do some technical things like that. We try to make sure people are aware that that's what we're doing.
Many years ago, if you wanted Durham GIS data, we would have to go through a process of, we're slowed down website, so you'd have to go through a process of contacting someone, filling out an agreement form, in some cases paying money. I think for education, we used to provide no cost, but citizens, and especially anyone else would have to pay for it. And so a lot of that has, perhaps before your time, has gone away. But I know many counties and municipalities still kind of operate under this model of having those barriers for sharing data. And so I was just wondering what the internal culture and feeling is about sharing data now that things have changed, if they feel like that's a big relief, it's saved a lot of internal money and processing time and more efficient, and how that message can be shared with other counties that are still requiring these hurdles to go through to acquire data.
Yeah. I think you pinpointed the particular departments that feel far less of a burden with it now as well, right? Our planning department, public works, GIS, departments that often get requests for zoning boundaries or whatever little thing it is. Now you can find a little bit. I think we should put together some. I think this is a great idea. We should put together some case studies. And we can circulate those. Yeah. It'd just be a matter of finding the right person that was there 10 years ago and is still there now. But I think that's something that we should do. And if you shoot me an email about that, and you want to be more about it.
Is there any talk about overlap between the open data programs and like the whole smart cities umbrella? Is that been talked about at all?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. We don't have a particular smart cities like group. We have an innovation team which is led by the budget department that does a lot of smart cities programming. And so the open data portal or the open data program has been involved in that program. Both as kind of helping to think and design a particular session and then hosting panels and stuff like that. But we don't have necessarily a particular strategy around smart cities.
Yeah, we don't yet either. I work in the city of Raleigh, but it seems like smart cities is starting to get real
Yeah.
with the budget behind it, and we just hired a smart cities coordinator position.
Yeah.
So I feel like that there's definitely a lot of overlap with open data and smart cities. Similar security concerns.
In Cary, I think Cary actually would be a great place to go.
Yeah.
Cary's doing a lot of really good things. Yes.
Yeah, the state has on the NC One Map, has a property parcel site where they collect property parcel data from all counties. And the Durham Durham data hasn't been updated since last September. And it's actually also that data that is put out there has changed, where a lot of the fields aren't there. And it used to also provide the original data.
Sure.
So are you aware of that, and do you have any idea what's going on?
So, my understanding was that our parcel data was up to date and correct, at least on the open data. But if you shoot me an email, I literally work down the hall from the GIS guys who run the parcel data, so we can figure it out.
Okay, great.
Yeah, just shoot me an email. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Any other questions?